Good day. Welcome to the Strong Ambition Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about training, nutrition, and mindset of what it takes to be a boxer, a mixed martial artist, and a military man with Alec Irvine. Alec is a former client of mine. He started with me when he was maybe 15, 16 years old. And at that time, he was maybe 150 pounds. And now he's, I think, 21, 22 years old. And he is 190 pounds in a lean, mean military machine. And we're going to talk about his evolution because we want to start right from the get-go. What got him inspired into boxing? What made him want to do that instead of hockey, which so many people do? And you're going to find a really fascinating story there on his inspiration, what made him such an angry kid, and this was his outlet. And what's inspiring him to want to get into mixed martial arts is that's his long-term goal, is he wants to be the best MMA fighter he can possibly be. But then what makes him want to do the military if that's his real mission? So we're going to talk about his evolution with me as a boxer, the things he had to learn in training and nutrition. We're going to talk about some of the mindset it takes to be a boxer, but really dive into the mindset it takes to want to get into the military and what inspired him to do so, because it was honestly a real mystery to me. And this is a really fun conversation because it is live in person. So you can catch this on YouTube or on Spotify with the video variation of it. And it does make it a lot more intimate and fun. So without further ado, here is Alec Irvine. Alec.
Ryland.
Pleasure having you here, sir. So this is fun. We're going to have a fun conversation today. So I actually want to get to know more of your story. I've worked with you in the past for quite a while, known you for quite a few years now, but I'd love to be able to introduce you more to the audience. The audience knows you better. I want to know your story a bit better because you're a very driven individual, and I'm curious how you got to be that way. And we'll talk about where you're at now, where your boxing career and that kind of stuff. So let's dive into introducing yourself to the audience.
Okay, well, Alec, that's me.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. From Morden, Manitoba,
Yeah.
Small little town, Corn and Apple. But yeah, just pretty standard. I feel like growing up, like played hockey and sports, and yeah, now.
What drove you into boxing? So, like, I love the small town thing. I got to tell you a funny story about Corn and Apple Festival.
Mm-hmm.
Until last weekend, when we went to the town, Morden, Angelina was saying, corn and apple. I really want corn. And I'm like, oh, it's corn and apple. I've always heard about the festival. I thought it was just named Corden Apple Festival. Like, like Corden Street.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's corn and apple, which makes sense because there's a lot of corn out there. So, funny side story. But let's dive into your exposure into sport, because your brother's a really good hockey player, very successful yourself. What was kind of some of your inspiration in sport growing up, and what transitioned you not to stay into hockey but more into the combat?
Well, inspiration for sport was really just my dad got us involved in like hockey and baseball, and baseball never took off for me. It was like just daydreaming, got hit in the head with a ball. I'm like, nope. But then hockey I enjoyed, and then once my dad died, that's when I was 7. I quit for a year and a half and did gymnastics. And then I was like, no, I'm not doing gymnastics, and went back to hockey. It's like, need to have friends, right? And,
and not in gymnastics.
Not as a guy when you're like 8, no. But no, went back to hockey and then played that till grade 11. And then from grade 11, I just ended up feeling scrappy because I fought like all the time growing up, just on the whoever really.
Did you have anger or anything like that?
Yeah, I had real bad anger issues when I was young. So
was there any particular reason?
I think it probably just stemmed from my dad dying, and then because I don't know, my buddy in grade 1 took my spot in reading. I tipped a chair on him, and my dad was still alive for that, so maybe it wasn't exactly.
You still had some times.
Yeah, but no, I think it definitely like catapulted after that, and like grade 2 and on, I just fought like crazy and was always in the office. So principal's office.
If you don't mind me asking, I don't know much about your history with your dad. So if you're willing to talk about it a little bit. So he passed away when you were 7.
Yeah.
How did he pass away?
He had a heart attack.
Yeah, heart
at
attack.
work.
He was a fair bit older than your mom, right?
Yeah, there's like a 20-year age gap or something. Yeah.
And so how old was he when he passed away?
He was 66 when he passed away.
66.
Yeah.
Relatively unexpected still, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so what was your relationship like with your dad prior to that?
It was really good. Me, him, and my younger brother, Will, pretty much did something like every day from my recollection anyway. But yeah, like whether it was like going like fishing or skating or dirt biking or something every day, like going to the beach, like just something every day. Yeah, it was pretty good. He would come home after work and say sometimes like, I just need just like 30 minutes to like, because he was an old guy. Like I couldn't imagine doing like raising two little kids at like he had me when he was 59, I guess.
Yeah.
So I couldn't imagine raising two kids at that age.
Yeah.
Never. Yeah. So he'd be like,
what did he do for work?
He did he worked a few different jobs, but he had his own accounting business in Altona, and then he had. And then he was working. I can't remember the place he was working at, but it was like a lumberyard type thing. I think when he passed away, like a home hardware type thing. When he passed away. Yeah, nothing crazy. But yeah, he was doing that. But sometimes he would come home and need a little break, and then my younger brother would just be like tugging on his ear and stuff, being like, "Let's go play." So, yeah, but we did from my memory, it was like every day we did something.
Very close. Yeah. So when you did lose them, it did make you angry, and that's kind of why you left the hockey.
Yeah, because for me, like my brother, he hadn't started playing hockey yet. He played the year like. After my dad died, was like his first year playing hockey, and it was his like connection to our dad almost, and like he just excelled at it. For me, it was like I would have to get my like skates tied by like other parents and stuff, and so it was just like an extra thing for me to like be like a reminder that he was gone. So I went the opposite route, and I was like, no, I just don't like this. I was getting angry, and I was like on a team they're like my best buddies now, but they were definitely bugging me a little bit back then, and so the anger aspect was very hard to control on a team with people like poking at you. So but so yeah, I just left for a little bit and then came back and still angry, but not to the same extent. When I played hockey, I wasn't mad at all, but yeah, at school and stuff, I was always angry. Always in the principal's office.
Still had a lot of violent kind of outbursts.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense why they would drive you so much. And then what was your exposure at that point to the martial art world?
Martial arts, I honestly Never Back Down, watching that movie. Yeah. I'm like, that could be me. No, I'm just kidding. But
that was like a modern day Rocky, right?
Yeah, I was like
fighting, right?
Never Back Down. I'm like
high school
an angry kid. His dad passed away. I'm like, that's
my
me.
Story.
Yeah, I just didn't know how to fight like that. So fighting came a little long because I would always fight. I was a street fighter, more of a street fighter, just see red and start going now. But I don't know, hockey just started making me, in my last 2 years of hockey, I just wasn't enjoying anymore. I was kind of ready to wrap it up. And then I started grabbing guys and fighting on the ice, which makes no sense because they have cages on. So I'd keep my glove on and just punch them. They're not really taking any damage. Cage, they're not taking any real damage. Just angry and then I ended up telling my mom in the last year of hockey, I was like, I want to start boxing, and stuff. Well, I guess I'll rewind a little bit. Me and my buddy ended up having a backyard fight, just a kickboxing essentially, but with MMA gloves on. And we just beat the shit out of each other, and then after that, my face has never actually looked that messed up, even in boxing. My nose was so swollen, and I was walking with a limp for a week. my lip was all fat. It was funny to look at, but after that, I was just like, yeah, I love it. Because I had gotten a grip on the anger outside of like hockey for, or at least fighting people for like a few years at that point. So I hadn't fought from like, I don't know, 14 probably. Hadn't really fought much anymore. I kind of got a grip because I was like, I'm getting to the age where I can start being charged. I should probably try to dial it in a little bit. But then had a backyard fight. And I'm like, I love this. I'm like, we gotta do something. I'm like, I just got my license. I can actually start going places because in Morden there's nothing. Now they've opened up some MMA gyms and some kickboxing gyms and stuff in Winkler, which is like 15 minutes from Morden, which is nice. But before, like when there's nothing around us. Like maybe you did like wrestling in school, and I didn't want to be in those tights at the time, so I was very, very, self-conscious at that. Yeah, like I'm not wearing tights, but now I'm like, I wish I would have. I mean, it's still an experience, but
and it's a great martial art.
Yeah, it's like like boxing and wrestling. I think are the foundations of really, like, if you can dictate where the ground goes and you already know how to stand and throw. I mean, pretty good odds of winning a fight. But
the wrestling, highly underrated too, like as like a trade to just have as a skill. But I find it interesting too, because there is that less of an appeal from like a martial arts standpoint when you're a kid, because you just think striking is where it's about. But that's because your movies are typically striking. You're not strangling guys too often, and it's not as exciting. And I always come back to the quote from, now I'm blanking on his name, your favorite boy, Conor McGregor. And he's like, when he did boxing, he's like, it's cleaner. It's like, it is. It's like you're not in the other guy's sweats and like wrestling, and it's an important part of like fighting. Like that's where most fights end up. But I think that's really interesting. So, because you didn't have much around when you started to think about getting into it, when did you start? I'm assuming you kind of trained yourself, the classic, where a lot of the basement boxing, right? Where you're YouTubing things, you're looking things up and being like, hey, what about this? What about this? And at the end of the day, you end up like just trying to teach yourself the mechanics to try to get to know the sport. And did you, from my understanding, that's kind of how you started, right?
I didn't initially even have a bag at home, but I would go to like Fitwell Center, a gym in Morden, and it had like one bag, and I just would hit that, and I would watch Shane Faison on YouTube, his fight tips, and I would just watch the YouTube videos, and then I started training myself while I was still playing hockey, like that last season a little bit, and then I once that summer hit and I had fought, actually I might have already fought at that point. Yeah, I already fought, had the scrap with my buddy, and then I played one more season of hockey, but I like had this itch. I like was done with hockey. I had that itch to fight, so I was just training. And then I told my mom, like, can you call some gyms, and I want to like start training. Like, I have my license now. I can drive on my own. Like, I can actually start traveling to do it. And then she called, I don't know which gym she ended up calling, but no one picked up. And then she tried United, and then you picked up, and that's kind of where our story kind of intermingled. And then we started training once every weekend or so. Or
at least once a week or so,
for the first little while, and then started with the competitive team. And that's, I guess, as I got with the competitive team, I started just trying to fight whenever I could. And that's kind of how the initial entry into the fighting came, though. I was just had that backyard scrap with my buddy, and was like, I need to do that. It gives
you an itch. There is something about your first, I want to say, like, inspiration of the sport, like that. You always remember the inspiration of the sport, that moment. For me, it was Rich Lavoie, watching some of his old training. We were watching some old Sugar Ray Leonard boxing versus Marvin Hagler, and so my buddy Ray, his dad was a boxing coach, and we were just watching him like, oh man, this stuff's so cool. And I remember even talking to Rich, and he would have fight stories, and I remember him telling me, like, it matters way more about knowing what to do than how big you are. And as a small chubby kid, I was like, I want that. And you just always remember that little inflection of like, I need this in my life. And I was also into hockey, but I still had a pretty good itch for hockey, but not the same. And I'll say, if I look at my sports career, similar to yourself, where like there's something that calls you within that sport, right? Mm-hmm. And a real boxer, like the calling is so raw, where you're like, I fucking want to be the best I can in this, right? Mm-hmm. And what's so hard for people, you probably notice this, when someone thinks they want to box, it's like, you're just not going to make it in this sport. Yeah. Like you might spar, you might go a little ways, but you almost have to be so naive to think you can be a world champion to have a decent career.
Yeah.
To be a world champion, you have to be 1 in a billion, right? Yeah. But to even have a decent career, you have to be naive to think that you could actually take on anyone. Mm-hmm. To even have the ability to stay in it long enough to have that discipline, you got to be fucking crazy. Yeah. And it has to be an obsession, because it just takes so much will and courage, right? Because it's so nerve-wracking in there. But I love hearing that, because what I was curious is, how long were you doing your own training by yourself, teaching yourself the mechanics? Because you came to me with a ton of the mechanics very well.
I would say it would probably have only been around 6 months or so, maybe a little over, maybe
really?
Like 8 months. But like, I had fought a lot, you know, and then I always just had like a understanding of the fighting. Well, to be fair, I'm saying like I'm kind of talking shit, because I just knew it all. But I remember thinking I was a good fighter, and then I came and sparred like for you the first time. But what was his name? Corey. I sparred Corey, and the first time I sparred Corey, and I don't know what his, like, I still don't have any, like, don't know what he did in the sport or anything like that. But holy shit, I couldn't land a punch my first time sparring, like, or anything good. Like, I felt stupid. Yeah. And I'm like, holy fuck. That is crazy to be. I'm like, if someone can watch for your punch, it doesn't matter how angry you want to be, or walking them down, or like, it just doesn't work. Like, they're gonna just take your head right off. Because I'm like, I thought I was good because I was always tough, but it doesn't matter. Like, if you can't land the punch, like, I just felt stupid in there, and I'm like, damn. I'm like, that's potential.
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's so much
potential.
more skill involved, right?
Yeah.
I had a guy recently, just yesterday. He's doing the sport, and he had the same experience. He was like, I just feel so stupid. I'm like, you're supposed to. Mm-hmm. It's like, there's not a single boxer, or very rarely is there boxers who just get it. It's no different than any other sport. Like, you're not going to feel capable of making that reaction. You can spend years training on a bag in shadow boxing. Bullets aren't flying at you, right? You don't know how to react. And I really, like, I hammer it in the tech class all the time to guys. It's like, you're now here to stand in front of people. The sport really begins now. Yeah. Punching mechanics is on the heavy bag in shadow boxing. The sport begins when people are trying to hit you, and you got to make decisions. And not just make decisions, but you have to make decisions, and you have to create new instincts. So your instincts have to be what happens when the hands fly at you. That you can't practice without another person in front of you. You need to be able to practice hands coming at you in order to be able to manage it in that decision. Like you said, it doesn't matter how good your punching mechanics are if you can't make the decision to actually deal with the actual challenge. And it's so normal for people to have that experience at the start and to appreciate that even yourself. What I think is interesting too is the fact that it was only 6 months and that brought your skills up. That's really impressive, because I do remember the day you came from me, I thought you'd be at least basement boxing for 2 years. Like, I thought you had way more time than that. So your ability to get your skills where they were is like, that's why you even did so well in the sport, is you're very natural in it. Your brother, what level is your brother playing now in hockey?
He just wrapped up his I guess, kind of career, but he was doing playing in the Maritime Hockey League.
Yeah. So it's like kind of equates to WHL.
No, it's a lower level, but he played in the WHL, and then the guys just never worked out and would come back and try to get in shape and in the the preseason. It's like you can't get in shape in the preseason when they're deciding whether they're gonna play you or not, man.
But like, I mean, it goes to show that you guys have some physical genetics within the two of you.
And he's always been like, athletically, he was always. It's hard to say if he was always just way better, but he was definitely way more driven to be athletic than I was up until boxing, and then it kind of swapped once his drive in hockey kind of like slowed down, and still played at a high level, but slowed down. Then just slowed down. Mine I just started boxing and I like shot way up, and I was just like training all the time and trying to practice all the time. But he played in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, which is one step down for a while, and then he didn't like that. He was playing up in the paw, and he was like,
"That's tough lifestyle."
Going from like playing with the teams you're playing and like going down, like it's very different speed, and like just a speed of play, and like even the guys you're playing with might not be as good, he didn't like that. Team's not well funded to my knowledge, and he didn't like it. And so he was like, okay, I'm done with hockey. Like, you won't trade me. Like, I'm not going to play. And then he ended up, a team offered him a spot out in Summerside Capitals, where he went and played the remaining 2 or 3 years of his hockey there, and now he just wrapped up his final year there. But he's going to play in a men's league with the Miramichi Northmen, if I said that correct. But he's going to play. He's staying out east. I think his plans right now are to go to become an electrician. But he's always really crazy athletically. Yeah,
so like, I mean, I looked at that when I knew that your brother was doing so well in hockey and how well you were doing in the sport. Like, there are genetic, dispositions that you guys had, like that you could push well in your sport. And the interesting thing was, prior to fully working with you when we did the online training, you were still just pushing hard. Like, it wasn't like there was a beautiful plan set up for you, right? We did our pad work, but a lot of running and a lot of hard, heavy bag workouts kind of scattered all over the place. I even remember when we finally worked together, I had to convince you to stop running so much. We're working together, and this is when we were doing the online. Because we were doing pads, and I was coaching you for many years. But when I was doing the online, your birthday was coming up, and you're like, I think you said, I want to run like 16 miles, or you want to run a mile for every year your birth or something like that? Yeah, so I was like, that was my 19th birthday, and I was like, I want to run a mile for like every year. Like, and I had never run like long distance. I've ran a lot of 5Ks. I was running lots of 5Ks, or here and there like a 10K, but nothing crazy. And then I just, I read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, and I thought, well, he ran 100 miles with no training. I could probably do it. And that's really, because at first it was the 19, and then it turned into, I might try to run 100 miles without training and just see what I can do. And then I think some of it I didn't tell you, because I was like, I knew you definitely wouldn't be on board. So I was like, but then it turned into, I was going for 50. Well, I think I started the run, and I'm like, okay, we're definitely not hitting 100. But I'm like, we'll aim for 50. And I ended up like only doing like 29 miles, which is like only, but like I hadn't really trained for it, and I was like crawling around after, like my feet were pretty fucked up. But it wasn't too bad. I was walking later the day. I didn't think you didn't tell me they actually did the run.
Maybe I didn't, because I knew you'd say it was stupid, but no, I did 29 miles. I started, for some reason I decided I'd start the run at midnight. I think it was because I was planning on running a lot longer than I did.
Right.
But I was like, I'll just finish and go to bed. But no, I started at midnight, and I ran for like, I don't know, I think I ran to like 8 a.m. or something. It was not crazy time for how much miles I did, because I was like running slow miles, and then I'd take like a 10-minute break and try to like every 5 miles and like try to keep my feet good. And that's the main thing I noticed with doing that, is like like, my body has just had no chance to actually condition for anything.
It's the impact.
So, yeah, I'm like,
your aerobic system won't quit on you. As long as you're existing, that's the cool thing I learned about doing long distance running is like, hey, aerobic system will turn off. You're not going to run out of energy like you would in like a sprint, like when you box. It's so much more intense. You run out of energy to do the thing. But when you're doing long distance, you can do it. It's just, do your joints want to do it?
Yeah.
I had a similar issue with my first my first marathon. I was feeling good in my prep, pretty decent. I had one longer run that was pretty stressful, and I hydrated and carbed for it. But the runs were fine, but then it was about 2 weeks prior, I'm like, man, my feet are hurting. And I couldn't figure out why. It's like, this is like a third of what I was doing 2 weeks ago. And I finally looked at my shoes and they're just ran right out.
Gone, yeah.
But because it's 2 weeks prior, you can't change your shoes.
No.
You can't do something like that that's going to totally change that your gait. It could be worse. It could be better, but it could be way worse. And so when I went to the running room, they're like, yeah, you can't change, but maybe try these compression socks, because if you have that extra edema, the swelling, it might push that fluid out. And even after your runs, it'll definitely help you for recovery. And so I wore those and made such a difference, because even like I felt like my feet were balloons, like they're about to pop when I'm running. And at least I didn't feel that feeling until I would say 3 to 6 miles into the whole race. So it was at least delayed, but man, I can't imagine. Well, I guess I can imagine it would have been like 3 more miles than what I did. But it is kind of crazy, but it's not as crazy as the 100. And there's another guy I knew who did the David Goggins inspiration. I'm going to go do a marathon. Santiago, he used to do our social media, and I see his stories like, I'm running a marathon, and he's like, as he's running it, he messaged me, any suggestions? I'm trying to do this. I'm like, get carbs. Like you're going to be dehydrated and you're going to run out of energy. You didn't train for this, and you probably didn't prep nutritionally. So he would like stop in at Tim Hortons or something like that and get some juice. And then he was just like, yeah, I was just so inspired by the Dave Goggins. And like, there's such a good and bad to that message.
The book's very misleading, because he's like, I didn't train. Well, okay, he was a power lifter before he even tried to go for the Navy. So it's not like he wasn't really strong. Like, he was maybe fat, but he was strong as shit. So that's one kind of it's not misleading, but it's very, like a very small portion of the book.
It is misleading.
And then you go from that, okay, so he's already super strong, and then he goes into the Navy. Yeah, sure, he had to lose a bunch of weight, but he went into the Navy. And I love David Goggins, but he went into the Navy. It's like, and then he's like, oh, I ran 100 miles without training. You're in the you're Navy SEAL. You have been running. You've been rucking. You have, like, your body is accustomed to a lot of abuse that someone who hasn't done, like even just my time in the Army, and we can get to that later, but like, they build you up. Like, it's not like it's not like you just randomly ran 100 miles. Like, you might not have trained for the 100 miles, but your body was used to the stress.
The long duration, the long aerobics.
And to be fair, like that's not to take away anything from, like, he was fucked up after that. He was like shitting himself. And
like, he has no problem causing bodily harm.
No, I'm just saying, it's like, most people have like life to live afterwards, and
that's a good way to put it. Like, it's important to take inspiration from his story to realize the human body is capable of a lot of pain before it breaks down, and we are too soft in our culture these days. Anytime that I've always said, like, if I'm about to do something that I know is going to push my physical ability, so I do my preps. Both of his books were my favorite reads during the prep, because I'm doing something, starving myself, listen to this book, yeah, I can push it, I can push it. Just get that Goggins mindset. And then as soon as that prep is done, I don't want to fucking listen to that. I want to be a normal person and kind of allow myself to take breaks here and there, push myself to a reasonable amount, and not feel guilty for being lazy in certain days, because that's kind of what he can push on people. Do another prep, listen to it again. And the funniest thing about that is his second book is called Never Finished. I didn't finish the book because I was done my prep. As I did my competition, I'm like, I kind of get this. He likes pain. And so I was done with it. But I think it's such a dangerous message for people who get into, yeah, I'll go do this, I'll go do that. And it's like, him devaluing training is a really dangerous thing for some people. Like, David Goggins is David Goggins to, like, he's an N of one, and the fact that he's even alive is impressive. There's so many reasons why he should have died out, and he probably will not live a long life. I'm not trying to say this as a hater. I'm saying that as a probability basis, if people try to live their life like he does, there's a good percentage of people who just won't make it. Well, people always forget about these unique stories, whether they're, people who, especially people who do really good in sports, and you're like, oh, well, he ran 10 miles a day, and he was a champion. He was a champion despite running 10 miles a day. That doesn't mean 10 miles a day was the great choice for him, right? It's like when people are the exclusion to the rule, they're not the rule. They tend to be an inspirational story, so you try to follow it, right? Which is such a detriment in the sport of boxing, as you and I both know, right? Because how many times did you try to push yourself, being like, I'm going to do, 29 miles, because you just like the idea of the push. And what, when we worked together, I think what was really interesting to me was I finally saw where you were lazy, and it wasn't the physical activity. It was the nutrition. It was the sleep. It was the consistent nutrition, eating vegetables, as we talked about earlier today, and the idea of, like, just do this thing, intentionally take a rest, do stretching, do the small muscle groups when you're doing your strength training, do your strength training, don't ignore it, it applies to your sport. And all those things that boxers are actually super uncomfortable with. They just rather push. Just tell me to go push. It's easier. Right? And so it's super, and I point this out to a lot of people. It's like, boxers like to push hard things, not the specifics, not the things that actually can make a difference and an impact down the road. I actually want to kind of come to that a little bit, because I'm saying it from my perspective. When we started to work together, what were some of the biggest mindset shifts, lessons that you think you learned along the way?
I think big ones being, like, I felt like I was doing less but getting more out of, like, my time, like when we first started working, I think we, like, dialed back a lot of, like, the time I was actually training, and I think it's really bad for combat sports and especially boxing, but, like, people will overtrain a lot, and but it's like, and they feel like they're working really hard, but it's like a lot of it's, like, not to say pointless work, but it's like not that beneficial with your time, right? So I think just like, we dialed back, even like you were speaking on the running, the nutrition side of things, like, all the nutrition work we did was good. We did that little nutrition competition. I probably never eaten that clean in my life, so that was good. But just the relationship with food, I felt like was a big one that even now, like, if I, like, it's a lot easier to dial it in if I want to than it used to be, because, like, there's I don't know, it's not that I can't have that food or can't have this, it's like just in moderation and prioritize the good stuff. And I think especially with the protein intake, like, if there's one thing I always try to make sure I'm doing is, like, hitting my protein macros, because I felt like that, me personally, had, like, the biggest effect on how my performance or how I felt and stuff like that. Was if I was hitting my protein, I was probably hitting everything else too, but protein would always be the one I'm lacking. Like, probably in a day, I probably did hit maybe fats or carbs anyway, probably over.
You had no problem.
But,
especially carbs and cereal.
Yeah, cereal, that's a big one.
Cereal was a food group.
Yeah, it was. You
hit your cereal like I hit protein. 3 to 4 times a day.
Yeah, Lucky Charms, they get you going. But no, I feel like it was just, like, a part of just the relationship with food was a big one, and then the ability to be okay with doing less is actually, like, more if you're doing it, like, actually have a plan put in place. And then I found a lot of our stuff was, like, I never, like, you and Brant both have shoulder problems from boxing, and I felt like that was never I never cared about doing rehab or anything, or doing like movements to keep my muscles strong or anything. And I felt like with our programs, it was good for the aspect of like getting strong, but also keeping everything healthy. And yeah, my shoulders and stuff felt good. But
it's a part of boxing for boxers. They always think it's like, oh, I don't want to be slow, I don't want to be stiff, wait to slow you down. It's like, actually, we just don't want you to get hurt.
Yeah.
Like it's like 90% of the benefit of it is mostly from the lack of getting hurt. You're going to get mostly good from your sport, but that injury prevention key is such a key. It's the biggest thing. If all you did, even with your spare time, was work on maybe your rotator cuff, maybe some hip stability issues, but most of the issues for boxers tend to come from the shoulders, right? If you just worked on grip, shoulders, and some hip stuff, just injury prevention, it would do most of what you need. And what was really interesting, and I still like looking at your before and afters, because you can see both the two things you mentioned. You can see the impact protein had. You also did more strength training, so you're going to grow muscle, but for sure you grew more mass. And your posture was just like, you were kind of here, a little bit lankier, and then up here. And it's not like, the funny thing is, we didn't do a massive pull to push ratio. It was a very equal pull to push, but you pulled so little, it made such an impact on your posture. Like you just naturally started standing upright more. I see it on a lot of people. I see it on people who just don't do enough pulling motion. I do love hearing about the food, so I want to tell your story, unless you want to tell your story, because I think your story, prior to us doing the online coaching and nutrition together, at that point I was when you first won Open Provincials, right before COVID. I was teaching, I was doing one-on-ones with you a bit, we were coaching in the gym, but I wasn't doing your nutrition. Tell people about your experience, what you ate that day, and your experience in the ring.
So we were leading up to provincials, my first Open Provincials, and I was...
First Open, so just so people know, Open, normally amateur, has 3 2-minute rounds, and this is your first time going 3 threes, which feels like day and night. So like that's deep waters, way more intense. So keep going.
Yeah, and I pretty much I had Subway. That was Subway's pretty much my go-to for like before fights. But I really misjudged the timing, and I ate half the sub, so like not the full thing because I didn't want to be sluggish. But I really misjudged the timing with how long I was gonna have to wait to fight, and you know, it was just that thing like, I'll just keep putting it off. But then the fight's getting close and I'm like, now I'm starving. And I'm like, well, not starving, but you know, I'm pretty hungry. I'm feeling my belly. Yeah. Like I feel
it's
weak.
growling.
Yeah.
It's growling.
And I just have put it off too long, and I decide, like, I don't know, not long before the fight, to go and get a slice of pizza because I'm like, I need something to keep me going. So I had a slice of pizza, and yeah, that was probably one of the worst feelings I've ever. The thing is, when it came to like the fighting aspect, that was like the first time I've ever felt like so terrible in fighting, like in a ring, of like exhausted. Like I remember coming to you at the end of the second round. And I'm not one who thinks like this. I'm like, I don't know how much more I got in me. I literally said, I'm dying. And then you're like, well, you got to go back out there, so you might as well give it what you got. And I'm like, those words, I don't know. There's just something about that. That was just, yeah, no shit. I'm not going to quit, like, once I'm out there. And it's like, I was feeling sorry for myself. So I'm like, I don't know how much I got left in me. But then you're like, well, you're going back out there, right? So give it what you got. And I was like, sure, yeah, fair enough. And I went out there, and then, and then we finished it. It was a close fight, but we got the job done. And
well,
I felt pretty terrible after. I actually, like, I don't know, there was like another hour after that fight where I'm just like sitting there trying not to like throw up, and I definitely didn't have a concussion, but I felt terrible, like just no energy, like I used every, like I was exhausted. But
and did good. You didn't end up throwing up though, right?
No,
but what you told me is like going into the third, you were trying every bit not to throw up.
Going into the third, like it was like, that's the problem, especially like with the nutrition side of things. Like you're already fighting. Why are you now? You have to be trying to focus on fighting and not
You're not
throwing
feeling
up.
good. Yeah.
Like, it's like so it's so mind draining. Like people might think it's a physical thing, but being like sharp the whole time is such a mental, like, you have to have so much focus. And yeah, like to have like your thoughts divided between like trying not to throw. And the worst part is, and I think I'm pretty sure it was the third round, me and him went into an exchange, and he actually caught me with like one of the best body shots I've been hit with. Because I don't get hit with a lot of body shots, but he caught me, like we were in an exchange and he caught me with one. And I thought to myself too, I'm like, there's no points for taking, like, they don't get points for taking a knee in amateur boxing. I thought that to myself. I'm like, I could take a knee. But then I'm like, but then you'll know I'm fucking hurt, and then I'm fucked. Because I'm like, he's gonna just, come at me extra hard. And I'm like, so I just stood there in front of him, and I just fainted, and he did nothing. So.
Well, it was. I didn't know that they would take points. Wouldn't that be a?
And as far as I'm aware, when it's only pro boxing. There's no actual, like, because amateur boxing, it's not a knockdown in amateur boxing, so there's no point. But it would be a punch, but it would only count as the punch. Like there's.
It depends on how they'd want it. It could still influence the judges, but it's not a guaranteed 10-9 round.
Exactly. Like the judges could be like, okay, that person's clearly winning.
You could
but there's
come back up.
Exactly. And I could, yeah. So there's no like that, and that was the other thought. Is like, yeah, okay, that's the other thing. Like, yeah, it's not technically a point, but the judges are going to think I'm losing if I take a knee, right? So it's like it gives him that round essentially. Like, am I going to drop him in this round? Because that's pretty much the only way I could show the judges. Like, sure, he doesn't get a 10-8 round. Yeah. It's like the only way I show the judges I won that round is by dominating or dropping him after taking a knee. So yeah, I don't know. It's just a moment of weakness, but I'm like, nah, we'll just faint. So I just stood there and just fainted.
That was the funniest thing to me about that fight, where the funny thing was that you're trying to throw up after pizza. That was really funny. The interesting part was I mentioned to you prior, and I said, if you ever feel like I tell you something in the corner and I'm wrong from your view, I give you every right to do what's right for you. Yeah. And then going into the third, I said, you can win this whole fight if you just move and jab. And you did not. You did anything but move and jab. But what was interesting is I saw that decision. I saw the decision you made. I'm like, you're like, I'm moving forward. This is working. And I just stopped saying move and jab. I was like, just fucking go, Alex. I was just being a cheerleader. I'm like, you saw something, and like you said, you just fainted in front of him. And it's like, that's actually what worked for you in that fight against him, was if you just applied pressure, he broke down, which is really interesting because, like, you just, even though you have a good footwork, you knew footwork wasn't going to be on your side because you felt like shit. But you had even mentioned Lane was able to really push against him like that. And it just, for some reason, it fucked him up. If you moved forward and your head movement worked, and ended up pulling up with a W.
I just knew, like, I never saw him in Lane fight, but I knew Lane beat him, and I knew how Lane fought. Yeah. I'm like, I won't replicate it as clean, but I can walk forward. So
Lane's was scrappy. It's not necessarily clean. It's just scrappy, right? So it can definitely work, and it worked. So, but that's great. I love hearing that for people to appreciate. People need to appreciate, because then future fights. How did the nutrition feel? Future
fights. Well, that was the funny thing with that fight, which was kind of.
Well, I was ready to COVID.
Yeah. So COVID hit. We take a little bit of a hiatus, but we start training together, and that's like when we started doing all the strength and conditioning and nutrition work together. And after that, like every fight every fight since that one, I've always felt fine, like good to go on the fights. Even the weight cuts, like if I had to cut weight, it was like, well, I'd just like walk right in on weight. It was like no problem, because it was like before I'd go from eating like 13 bowls of cereal a day to eating like 2 a week. So I'd just be starving, and I'd be like hitting hand pads before a fight and just like cramping up, like just felt gassed.
Your quote, another good quote from Alex was, well, you sent me that nutrition thing, and the one thing I paid attention to is the guy who lost weight eating McDonald's. So if I just eat less food, I know I'll make weight. And it's like, that's not the point of the whole message. Oh, that's funny.
No, but like I just started understanding like I think a big portion too is like understanding like how you feel eating both food types. Like, yeah, I could eat bad, but you can't perform properly on bad food. Like, it's just, you do feel it. Like, if I have a blizzard, I feel substantially worse than if I don't have that blizzard. Like, if I eat a whole blizzard, I'm probably not going to feel too great after the blizzard for a little bit, you know? And when that was like cereal and blizzards are my whole, or pizza is like my whole diet, it's like, yeah, it's not great. But so going into fights, like, I feel like, and you sent me, there's a book you told me to read. It has such a similar name to the other book. There's two of them. There's
War of Art?
Yeah, War of Art.
And Obstacles the Way?
Yeah, War of Art, I read Obstacles the Way, but War of Art I found was a good one in terms of like, it spoke, and it's been a long time since I read it, but it spoke a lot of like being a professional and like the thought process of what professionals do and how they act. And I felt like that when I decided to take a fight, it was like, okay, like this is 100% of me, you know, like this is, I'm gonna make sure I show up as best as I possibly can. And especially like winning provincials, I'm like, the next step's nationals. And if I want to be able to compete with the best in Canada, I am going to have to be at my best. So I think kind of realization with that. I'm like, why? Yeah, maybe I'm getting away with winning Manitoba provincials off of eating a slice of pizza, but that's not going to fly against the very best in Canada. So I think reading that book and putting it into perspective, and then just not like, it was a long time before I could compete again, and so it was really just getting nutrition down. We did the nutrition challenge, and I felt like all that stuff just showed me that it was like, okay, like it's not hard. It's just a conscious effort. Like,
it's a consistency.
Consistency.
I always tell people, like, the word hard, and it's such a boring word, consistency. When people say the key is consistency, it's like it's too simplistic for people to believe that's it. This is why there's so many diet fads out there, because the hard notion of eating nothing but plants, or the hard notion, it's so directive, and because it's so much more challenging, it maybe engages people more, but it's like, no, actually you can eat the blizzards and all that stuff, but just the right amount. Like, walking the line of moderation is way harder than just absolution, right? If you absolutely do this one thing, it's simpler. Like you said, it's not necessarily, and I think hard is just so relative, and I don't like using the word hard because it depends on how the person experiences hard.
Yeah.
I always say it's simplicity. Just use the word simple so you can appreciate the simplicity. It is still hard to do something very consistent for a long period of time. Like anything, you want to learn a language, it's actually simple. Just read the language, practice the language, and do it for many years. You can learn language. That doesn't make it easy, right? And nutrition's the same thing. And I really love how you had mentioned about the application of being the professional, but bringing your game the best you can in competition is super important, because I talked about this earlier. As a boxer, doing your own thing, doing your own hard work, you just love the hard. It's like, yeah, but actually, that's your easy hard. And I love this description. It's like, know that you have hard, and easy hard. Everyone has their version of it. Most people will have something that is hard for a lot of people, but it's easy for them. It's like strength training. What we just did for our workout today was easy for me. That is so hard for people to do consistently. That is a pastime for me. It's like you going for a run. Like, that is not hard for me to do. So it's not my hard. My hard is doing mobility, because I don't like stretching.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Doing the things that I don't get that buzz from. That's my hard. And for boxers to appreciate your hard is the boring stuff. Is actually telling yourself to rest so you can go hard the next day. And the thing I really dress this up for people when they go to, compete, is how nervous are you going to a fight, right? Like, think about some of your biggest fights you had, and just like, for me, I know that crippled me, right? You would just constantly in your mind all day, every day closer to the event, you get like more and more tense, more and more nervous. The day of your event, walking, it is more painful getting to the ring than being in the ring. Like, the ring, the whole experience of the fight is so fucking fast. And even if they are, you've had longer rounds than I had, even if they are 3-3s, that is still so much faster than the whole day of waiting for that fight. But the one thing is, if you go into that fight knowing I did my training as I had my plan and I worked my ass off during it, but then I rested when I was supposed to, I got my sleep when I was supposed to, and I didn't leave my nutrition to question, you have that much better of a chance of feeling confident going into the ring. At least you have that much more. You're already going to deal with an ocean of doubt, but at least your nutrition is something to back up that confidence. But if you lag that nutrition the whole way, you kind of winged it, and you're having that funny stomach feeling from a piece of pizza or whatever you had that day, well, that's just going to add to that doubt, and that's going to be a leak in the hull. How about for you? How did you handle nerves going into fights? Did you always feel nervous? Did it bug you, not bug you? How did you manage it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely always nerve-wracking. And I think for me, like, I'd always try to get the boys to come out too. Like, I'd always beat people up. I never really had a problem with fighting, so it's like I always felt an extra pressure to make sure that I performed well, I guess. But no, the nerves are like such a weird thing, because like I feel like if you don't have nerves, you actually just don't care about being there or something. Like I don't know how you wouldn't have nerves.
It's either your competition is so beneath you, it's not a real competition. You could have done something so many times that it doesn't make you nervous, so it's less stakes. Like there's that Cam F. Awesome. I'm not sure if you know that guy.
Yeah.
American heavyweight. He changed his name to F. Awesome.
Yeah.
And we got to meet him at the Melee the one year. He was warming up upstairs, and we were like, "You nervous?" Like, "Nah, man. I have like 160 fights and stuff." It's like, if you've done something 160 times, you've seen a lot of hard competition. I get being less nervous for sure. But when you have had anything under, 20, you're going to be nervous for it, right? And even Brandt had said, you're actually, as long as your competition's there, you're always nervous. You just learn how to handle it differently. It's like, do you feel nervous? Do you feel like there's a chance things go wrong? Yeah. But you know that feeling so much. It's like feeling fatigue in a workout. Yeah, I know what it's like to breathe heavy when I'm doing cardio. I know what it's like when my muscles burn. But you're used to that in some sense, right?
That's, for me, like I just found the nerves were always there. After I had about 14 fights is when it started getting like pretty comfortable with it. Like, or just even like, I feel like that's, 14 fights-ish is just so you feel like at that point you get a lot more comfortable with the nerves. You're like, yeah, they're coming, it's expected. Also, I think like we always focused on like box breathing or tactical breathing type stuff, where like make sure you keep in like, if you feel it start to come, like deep breath, like stuff like that. I always found that to work really well. But also I think it's like a lot of self-talk too. It's like the less stuff you have doubts, or the better you prepare, obviously, like you were saying, gets rid of those doubts. And I, especially towards the end, and maybe why I felt less stress or anxiety or anxious, is mainly maybe just because I prepped better, and I just was more confident going in because I knew I actually had done everything. Like, I know one fight I went into, I literally played like Red Dead Redemption 2 for like a month before, and I'm like gassed in like the first round, and I'm like, I was just on the back pedal, and like I did lose that fight. I'm like, and I'm like, after, I'm like, yeah, that was my fault. Like, like it was still a close fight, but like it's like I could have won the fight if I just trained. Like, but yeah, like I don't know. Nerves are always kind of there, but I think they're there with anything important. I feel like anything I've wanted to succeed at a lot, I've always had those pre-fight nerves, I guess, or just like doing the thing. Like, you're gonna be nervous, but
for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt like I was pretty good at mine. Wouldn't be like very bad. Like, it would be like only the day of, if it was maybe a couple days out, but even then it would be like for a moment and go away. The day of is pretty nerve-wracking, but even then I'm pretty relaxed. And I found, kind of for me, some people get really tense. I found for me, like if I just walk around and I'm joking with people,
Right.
I don't need a big warm up.
Totally.
Like
Same.
for me, I don't need a big warm up. I can kind of just hit the pads a little bit and I'm ready to go. Like I don't want to feel like I'm like already
Ramping
did a
up.
workout. Like I want my heart rate low when I'm going into that ring. For me, and once I figured that out, and that kind of all started after. Well, that kind of all started with, I think, the fight, my first, not the provincial championships, but the semifinals there when I fought in Pan Am, underneath Pan Am there, because I had that first fight. When I fought that guy, it was right after I lost in Brampton in a close fight, and I was so mad at myself for the performance in that fight, because like I was probably boxing some of the cleanest like long range boxing I've ever done, but then I would like fumble at the end of the round on the ropes, and like he would steal around. And I remember, I think you and Brant are there, and you guys were like, it was close, and I'm like, it wasn't fucking close. I was pissed. I was like, I knew it wasn't. It was a split decision, so it was right. It was close, but I did not feel like it was worth being close because of my own perception of the performance and.
You were in your head a lot.
Yeah, and I felt like, but after that, like, I just after that fight, kind of with you, kind of just like go out there, have fun. At the next time I fought, and then it kind of just reminded me, like my dad before I would play hockey, it'd be like just have fun, you know. So I was like, it would. I started thinking of that before I'd fight. It'd just be like just have fun, because if I just have fun, it's like I'm sparring. Like it doesn't like if I'm just having fun, I'm flowing around. I'm flowing. I'll try things like they land a good shot. Okay, what's the solution to that? Like fix
Learn
it. Like
from it.
it doesn't matter. Like I never go into fights scared of getting hurt. So it's like that's not like what's in my mind. It's just my own performance. I want to perform well.
Yeah.
So it's like. And once I just started having fun, I guess, essentially, I have never lost since then. Not like I've competed a crazy amount of times, but I think like 7 times or so.
Yeah.
And I'll like, it's worked since I went to Brampton whenever was it? I don't know if it was the next year, but maybe I think it was 2 years after. But once I got a chance,
because you were in the military. Right?
Yeah, I joined the military, and then I was like, and no, it must have been that year. The next year, it might have been 2 years after. I don't know, but I still had like my registration, because I haven't re-registered since, but I had my registration still active and everything, and it was coming to. I was up in Meaford on this thing called PAP platoon. It's like waiting between courses, and I was up in Meaford after my basic training. And I saw that I was like 190. I'd like kicked way up. I was like 190. I was like looking, and I saw that Brampton Cup was happening again, and it was happening at a different time than it usually
earlier.
did. Yeah. So it was happening in July, and I was like, looked at I'm like, it's like 2 months out from when I saw that, and I'm like, I could train for that. So I wasn't sure what weight class I was going at, because I was like, I need to cut weight, but I don't know what I would fall into. And I ended up going with the 165, 75 kg, and then I stopped both the guys I was fighting at that. So I mean, working well. And I actually, that was like the first time like how that I prepped for a fight after COVID that we weren't really working together, but I just took everything we had done and pretty much applied it on my own training. And since I didn't have a lot of sparring or like stuff to do out there, I really didn't focus on the boxing aspect too much. I would spar once a week, but I just cut weight like a nice slow steady. Since I only had 2 months to cut like down that much weight, I like no junk food really, but cut down and walked like right on weight both days, and that was like a good weight cut. And I just focused on doing like high like hit workouts and sparring, and then like doing the rehab stuff, and then I went starch those guys. So.
Well, in like even watching the highlights, you just look so comfortable in the ring. Like that was like that, like you said, that comfortable mindset.
I think part of it that came too. It's like, what do I have to lose? I haven't even been training.
You're focused on the military. Like you're doing this for fun. You literally were doing it for fun and ended up finding the best version of you. But I'd love to know that part of the story, and we can allude into this and kind of wrap up a little bit because I want to know more about your military transition, and then we'll have a future podcast after you've done even more military work. But what I'm really interested in, so after this was an interesting conversation we had. So you reached out to me about like, should I join the military? And from day one, it was always like, I want to be an MMA fighter. I want to be pro MMA fighter. Brad Katona is my inspiration. I want to do that. And so you talked to me, and I didn't tell you what to do, but I told you why I didn't think it was a good idea. And I laid out the logic for you. And you even were saying, like, what makes more sense? Just focus on MMA or do the military? And you're like, yeah, no, it kind of makes sense. Week later, I signed up for the military. And so it's like, I like at that point I supported it. I just made sure I laid out the facts. Yeah. But it's just like anything that's a crazy idea. Someone can lay out all the facts of why boxing is a high risk thing, don't want to do it, and we do it. What is it about the military that called upon you in such a way?
It was like, I don't know, I'd watch a war movie and then I'd be like, I want to do that. No, it was kind of like...
And how long, by the way? How long was that in your head?
So, like, I'm not like I guess you're like, maybe like stereotypical, like, I want to grow up to be a soldier or whatever. Like, I really never even thought too much about it. When I was 16, they came to our high school and they kind of briefly, they had like the flyers out, and I was like, could do that if I don't know what else I'm going to do with my life. Like, wasn't getting good grades or nothing. Schooling wasn't like a thing I liked at the time and stuff. So I was like, I don't really care about learning. And then everyone was also very skeptical how I would do in the Army, because sometimes I have had a problem with authority and in the past, and they're like, if someone starts screaming in your face, you're probably going to punch them. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, maybe at a time, but no, I don't know. So that kind of piqued my interest, but I had a girlfriend at the time. I'm like, I'm not going to join the Army with a girlfriend at the time. And then I was like, then I just never really thought about it. Started boxing, and I love boxing. I'm like, well, I don't want to join the Army now because I'm like, I love boxing. I want to get better at boxing. I had some goals to achieve, and I honestly, if COVID never happened, I don't know if I ever would have joined the Army, because I would have done a national. I would have probably done 2 nationals, or at least tried. I wouldn't have stunted, because it's like I was supposed to go to nationals, and then like a month out, COVID shut everything down. 2 months out maybe, shut everything down, and I was like, well, that sucks. And and then so if that never happened, I probably would have never joined the Army. But then I just kept having like this little urge. I'd like see little things, and I didn't even really follow the Canadian Army too much, but like I watching movies or like seeing like other Navy SEALs talk on like Instagram or stuff. I'm like, there's just a part of me, and like David Goggins' book and stuff, and just the grind. I'm like, I'm searching for something hard, and like boxing had come to this point where it's not that it wasn't hard. I love boxing. That's the pretty much the reason for any drive I ended up developing pretty much stemmed from boxing, because I wasn't like a driven person beforehand. Like I didn't really care about nothing, but it gave me, and I think the community as well, just being around a bunch of like you, Brant, like even other like people at the gym, just around a community that was like all individuals trying to better themselves and like kind of interested in the same stuff, was like a good little catapult of drive. And then and so it kind of stemmed from COVID, I guess, not doing anything for a while, and I was just welding and training, and I'm like, it's very monotonous. Like I didn't feel like there was a big end meaning. Like not competing was super like
There was no
annoying.
competition because we were still just coming back from COVID. This was like 2 years after, year and a half. We were just getting back in the ring.
And I kind of said to myself, like I kind of had the thought during like earlier into COVID too, but I was like, I want to give myself a chance to compete again to make sure I'm not like to make sure I really want to join, because the minimum contract's 3 years. Like, I don't want to do something for 3 years if I haven't really thought about it. And so I where was I really wanted to think about it, and I wanted to give myself a chance to compete, because again, so I could like make sure that I just don't forget what it feels like to actually train and compete for something, and like don't forget that I like love this, you know. And so I wanted to give myself a chance to compete. So then I did. I went to Alberta and fought in a tournament thing, well, a card, but had 2 fights there back to back days, and then won those, and then provincials was like right around the corner and stuff. But I
You
just
won provincials.
I won the semi finals, and then I was supposed to, like, I would have went to the finals match, but I pulled out because I went to the Army, because my join date was before the end.
I thought you won because wasn't it that you fought? I thought you fought in the semifinals because it was against Riker again, and
It was against Riker again, so I would have qualified. Like,
who were you
national
supposed to fight after
so
Riker?
it was that little kid. That not kid. He's probably older than me. Honestly, I don't know. He looks like a kid though.
Small guy.
No hate, but yeah, like I can't remember. I don't know his name. He walks around with that little like paperboy hat type thing. Yeah, supposed to fight him though. He fought Andrew. And be Andrew.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I thought because I know you took Riker's spot, and I thought it was semifinals. But that was the funny thing is like you snuck by Riker, which I think you definitely won the first time against Riker in the first provincials that you beat him in. That last one I thought was very close. I did not know if you had that.
So that was the funny thing is like they gave me a split decision the first time and a unanimous the second time, and I was in the same boat. I'm like, I'm gonna lose this fucking fight, and it's my last fight.
Too many overhands.
Yeah, I'm like, it's the last fight, and I felt like it was
Very close.
fine, but I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. I wouldn't have, if they gave it to him, I would have been like, yeah, whatever. But because I also knew I was leaving for the Army at that point.
Right,
I had already
yes.
accepted my terms and everything, but. Yeah, I thought it was close, and then I was like looking at people, and people are like, I looked at the comments on the videos, and people are like, yo, he's killing him, and I'm like, maybe these are biased people, maybe they're my friends or something, I don't know, but yeah, people were like, you killed him, and I'm like, I felt like it was close because it wasn't a good fight, like it was a disgusting,
Very
like
scrappy.
for someone to watch, like maybe for like it wasn't a good fight if you knew what you were watching. It might have been a good fight if you didn't, but it was like a lot of like clinching, punching, and like it was just messy, and he started clinching a lot, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this a dog fight, because I'm like, I am hitting him as hard as I possibly can with like every shot. I don't even care. I'm just gonna push the pace, and I got the win, and it was unanimous. But I don't know.
It was very close.
I wasn't. I was like, it was not a. It wasn't a clean fight by any means. So it's like, if they want to say I unanimously won, for sure. But it's like, it was messy as shit. So.
But that was the funny thing is you stole the spot and then walked away. And
Yeah,
it's like because it's just like a little bit more salt on the wound. Like you stole that fight, and then you actually I'm out. You can take my spot. So, so okay, you sign up for the military. Let's talk about the military very quickly here before we wrap up. What's it been like for you going into the military? And I'd just love to hear maybe just a handful of like big lessons from being in the military. And I also want to highlight how you graduated, because you graduated with honors, correct?
Well, for basic training, so each course has like a top candidate award they get. Basic training, I didn't. They have like a few different like accolades you get. Like there's like top athlete, top candidate, stuff like that. In basic training, anyway. In basic training, I didn't get nothing, and then I went on to my infantry training, which is like our like your trade training. and I got top candidate in my trade training. So
Cool.
that was good. Yeah, it was. I did my BMQ in Meaford, which is like a newer thing I guess they've been doing, especially since COVID, to try to allow more courses to run. Because usually it was only done at Saint Jean in Quebec. But I think they want more courses so they can run more courses so that we can have more numbers. I don't know. But yeah, so I did mine in Meaford. And COVID was still kind of a thing, so we were doing it all on masks and stuff, which honestly for me is good because like they start screaming at you. It can be a little funny. Like maybe it is like definitely nerve-wracking, but or if they're screaming at another candidate, it's kind of good to have because like can't see you smiling as much. And so
I remember you telling me that you're like, when other people are being reamed out and you find it funny, it's a really good thing your mask is on because it's like, because it is kind of funny when someone else is being reamed out for the way that, because my understanding is in the military, their biggest mission is to break you down psychologically. If you can't handle it, then that's like they want to make sure you can handle psychological like push,
there's definitely an aspect of that is to make sure like a lot of it is to just build up a stress response so that like if it's go time that you don't freeze. Like you're used to operating under stress. Like when you're really stressed out, I mean, you're trying to like do stuff, fine motor movements stop working. Like your fingers just stop working like how they should, or like your brain, you kind of just
you can freeze. Like, that's
so
it's why people freeze.
So yeah, there is a level of that for sure. And I don't know. It's pretty funny. I think everyone can kind of agree. It's funny thinking back on it. Like, I don't know. My staff was always good. I always had good core staff. And but yeah, did basic in Meaford, then moved over to Petawawa, and did my DP1 in Petawawa, which is like a pretty unique experience because it's like never done. Like you never do your infantry training at battalion, really, at a battalion level thing. And so we had one RCR train us, and it was good. We had a good experience, and I don't know, like you get to do all sorts of stuff. Like I've used claymores, LMGs, rocket launchers.
A lot of what my understanding that like some people can overestimate the combat skills hand to hand of military, but it's because most of the military is weaponry. Like I mean that's what
if you're in hand to hand combat in military, like in war, like
it's not going well.
It's gone really bad. Like I mean, like it's definitely a skill to have, but. That is like the worst case
scenario. You're not trying to bring knuckles to a gunfight.
No,
right?
That's stupid.
I wanted to highlight your experience with, because your mom told me about it, was the cold that they made you do. And it was interesting because she sent me the video of it. What was that like? So you had to go into a cold ice lake, right?
Yeah, so it's like part of the cold weather operator course. Mm-hmm. So you... it's about like it's a few weeks long course, but that's a lot of classroom, and then they bring you out to the field, and then you spend like a week in the field, and you pretty much are just learning how to like it's a lot of like snowshoeing, like cross country skiing type stuff with your ruck on, getting used to like if you had to move around in the winter, because it's a base level course essentially, but it's like if you had to get used to moving around in the winter with your ruck and stuff, like you're already used to it, right? And so it's for that, but like teaching you about snares and like if stuff went wrong or you had to survive in the winter, you could is essentially like the main course, how to build your own improvised shelter, start a signal fire. Like it's a pretty cool, like little fun, like it's like a camping trip with the boys. It's not tactical really, but just a familiarization almost with just outdoor survival. Mm-hmm. And so we do that, and then we went and they cut out a big chunk in the water, and you had to go into the water with all your clothes on and stuff. And that is simulating if you were walking on ice. Essentially, you break through the ice. Now you have to do your like your drills, your like cold water submersion drills or something. And it's like, let me see if I get this right, if I can remember. It's been a while. It's been a little over a year since I've done that course, but it's 1 minute to get your like breath under control, 10 minutes of meaningful movement, and 1 hour. So it's like a 1-10-1 rule. It's like 1 minute of 1 minute to get your breath under control, 10 minutes of meaningful movement. Like that would be like trying to rewarm yourself. So like, if you can, definitely change your clothes. Definitely recommend changing into a new pair of clothes if you can. And then you're doing like squats, jumping jacks, whatever you can to get your heat back.
Body heat up. They actually encourage you to do exercise to get yourself warm.
Yeah, and so some sort of meaningful movement, whether maybe you're walking around or like doing a little jog,
Just
something to get yourself warm, because
get yourself warm.
You're in a state of potential hypothermia, because then the 1 hour is you have 1 hour till you're like become hypothermic, essentially. Is like is typical rule. Like if you can get your breathing down, like in control within a minute, do your 10 minutes of meaningful movement, you're probably on a good track to being okay within the grand scheme of an hour. But yeah, that's what you ended off with, and you go in there and then you have to go and change it. It's not bad. It's honestly like a little polar plunge. I think I was in there for around like 30 to 40 seconds, I think it took me to, so I'll kind of rewind. While you're in the water, before you can get out, they're asking you questions. So you have to like respond answers to also like, because people, you go into shock. And so it's as a way of, for one, the only way you're answering questions is if you can get your breath under control. So
because you can't talk.
Yeah, because you can't talk otherwise. So your first step is like you're just trying to like take really deep breaths, just your normal like breathing, trying to get that heart rate down.
Control that heart rate down.
And then once you can answer questions, and you are answering questions, you've pretty much proven you're not in shock if you're answering questions sensibly, and then you climb out, and so when you climb out of the water. When you go in the water, I'm kind of all over, but you go in the water, the first thing you do is like slap your hands, like you swim to the edge, and you want to slap your hands on the edge of the ice, essentially, because it's not ideal. We had gloves and stuff on when we did it, but real time, we operate pretty much with gloves on all the time anyway, it's of some sort. But if you didn't have gloves, and this is like you're in your own survival situation, like you're gonna slap your hands and stuff, which kind of sucks because your skin's gonna freeze to the ice. Mm-hmm. But would you rather be found stuck to ice or be under the water?
Yeah, I was thinking like if it's a river, there actually could be a current and you can get.
So that's the thought process. There is you stick yourself essentially to the ice, and then while you're breathing and everything, you want to get to somewhere you have contact while trying to get your breath down. And then once you crawl onto the ice and you kind of army crawl a little bit, and then you roll away. So because if you try to stand up in the thought process again, you should try to stand up next to a spot you just broke through, you might break through again. So you kind of crawl and then roll away and then stand up, which is kind of a neat thing that I wouldn't have thought of. So yeah.
No, I think that's cool. And your mom had said you messaged her and said, well, it's a good thing Brian got me to do all those breathing drills. I was just trying to get your nasal breathing during running. Yeah. But it's such an impactful thing, right? When you start to realize that just the idea, and then slow, it's a gateway into your nervous system that we normally don't realize, right? Because if people are too panicked, you can actually stimulate your sympathetic nervous system by breathing heavy, or you can breathe in your nose, slow out your mouth, and bring down your heart rate like it's a trigger, which is a really hard thing to do. I think that's really cool that you have those kind of tactics. And so let's leave it off with this, because we've already gone well over an hour, and already a cool story. We've got a lot of boxing, but let's talk about what's your ambition in the future here, as far as military and MMA and fighting in general. What are you hoping in the next few years down the road? What do you see?
Yeah, so for military-wise, I'll just start with that. There's a basic jump course. Since I'm 3 RCR, I'm like a light infantry unit. Everyone has to have their wings. You have to be a jumper. You don't actually, but you're a light infantry unit, you might as well. So I'm gunning for that. I think that course is October, November sometime. So that's a course I want. I haven't been able to get it. But yeah, I just finished my reconnaissance course, so hopefully do some cool training stuff with them and learn more from them, because on course, kind of just trying to survive. It's a hard course, but do the basic para. If I could get free fall, we'll see. It's a tough one to get, but if I could get free fall, that'd be sick. After basic para, but
so parachuting is para.
So yeah, you got basic parachuting, and then free fall is like jumping with like there's static line. And I'm not a genius when it comes to this stuff, so it might be a little off. But free fall, it's like you like high altitude stuff. So like you're jumping from like way higher, and you're not jumping from way higher, and different kinds of parachutes. I don't know exactly how, like there's like square chutes, and I think square chutes are the basic para, but I haven't done these courses, so I'm not like a genius. But there are different kinds of parachutes, and free fall is just way nicer jumping, I think. Like from my understanding, it's just like, that's actually nice. Basic para is like an introduction, but it's not that enjoyable. Like it's a good, enjoyable time, but like you land hard. It's not like. And
so basically what you're saying here is like basic para is you jump from the plane, immediately pull your chute, so you're getting right into the parachuting. And free falling is higher. You eventually parachute down, but you're actually doing more of a free fall to actually guide your land and placement. So it actually does sound like more fun.
From my understanding, it's. That's essentially. And I had my buddy who just went to California to do it. So he did his free fall course in California, and he said it was sick. So
that sounds cool.
Jumped like 50 times. So.
That's amazing. And then so you're thinking about special forces as well?
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to do. And I tried last year, but you need a 2-year requirement, and you'll see like varying things online, like if that's true, if that's not. In my case, that was true. So you can get a waiver, but they denied my waiver, which isn't bad. I just look at it as more time to prep. I got a reconnaissance
more
course.
Things to get in.
Gonna get basic para, so go for that at some point. But I also really want to gun for, as far as military goes, there's a lot of things, like a lot of courses that I want. I'm pretty ambitious when it comes to that. So it's just, if I get lucky to an extent, but there's like Pathfinder or Sniper, like a bunch of stuff, and those are like just if I can get them. But Special Forces is definitely the end goal. And then I definitely want to try to take an MMA fight at least, I want to say this year. I want to say, well, maybe not this year, because like thinking of 6 months, but within this next, like from this date, like from August to August.
Yeah, I see. Within the next 12 months.
Yeah, within the next 12 months. That's an easy way to say it.
It can be deceiving when you think of the calendar years.
Within the next 12 months, I want to try to get in an MMA fight because I got my blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and I've been dabbling in Muay Thai, so I just need to get to an MMA gym and actually start the process of dialing a few things in. But I don't think it would. I would be fine taking one right now, honestly. But it's just a matter of
lining up timing, training.
Yeah, I just have to figure. Well, I don't even know the process of how it how it works. So I don't know. Like I know how boxing fights happen. I know, but
and you have to. Every city's different. Is what they actually legalize and the levels that they'll have. Like there's some places it's still like kickboxing isn't legal here.
I know amateur MMA just got, I think, passed in I'm not sure if it's Canada or just like you were saying some provinces, but even amateur MMA wasn't a thing. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to try to get into that definitely within the next 12 months, because I think that would I don't know. I mean, that's the goal to some degree. My goals have because Special Forces wasn't the goal, and that just kind of became a goal while I was in the Army.
Yeah.
MMA was the Army, and I kind of got away from training. Well, I've been training, but not consistently MMA, or MMA focused. So I want to get back to that because that's still a goal I want to at least complete and dabble in and see if I love that as well, because that would be, well, I know I would. It's just I need to dabble in it and see if I want to. What level do I see the potential going to?
Yeah.
But
yeah. No, I mean that's why I was talking to you about it so much, because it's like it's a tough life to be a pro fighter, right? That's why I was talking about this session you talked to Brad Catoni, because it's like there's just so much more loss that you have to deal with in that kind of a sport. You're sacrificing way more for not a lot of money, but just like anything, it's like if there's a passion behind it, it can be worth it if it's worth it to you. And but I think the cool experience here and this is why when you made your decision of like, hey, I'm going for, I literally lay out all the facts of why it would not be a good idea for you to go to the military, and for a week later for you to say, I signed up for the military, I'm like, fuck, he wants this. And that's really cool. And I think that's actually, like, when you describe some of the challenges you had, the mental challenges, that's your fucking cup of tea, right? That's like, that is your shit. Like, push me mentally, make me think of I'd rather intensity. And you had mentioned the real impactful thing was that you had too much routine that was boring and not pushing you. You didn't have an environment. Your friends weren't going after anything. You didn't have as much time boxing. And so you love the environment of, I don't know if we can do this, but let's go. Yeah. Because it puts those blinders on, it puts that adrenaline into it. And, you know, the hardest thing, as we mentioned, working together was the boring shit, because it's not as intense. So it makes sense. So I love hearing that. And we're going to have you on again in the future, because I want you to get through all this training. I want you to tell me more military stories. Hopefully, you know, in the future, you don't have any hand-to-hand combat, as we mentioned today. It's not a good idea. It's not a good sign if the Canadian military is involved in any way, because that means things aren't going very well in the world. But at least we'll have some great training stories. I do want to dive more into the training aspect of the military, because there's a lot of really interesting, both goods and bads about it. But you've got some feedback there. But I think we'll wrap it up there. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm really excited to see how the military and the MMA works out for you, my man. So thank you for coming on today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Alec for that real fun conversation. It was so great to get to know him better. I knew that there was more behind him than what I knew. His father was a prime example. I knew something happened to him, but I didn't know the history of it, and I didn't know how much it impacted him. I just suspected. And Alec is a kid that you wouldn't suspect had anger, but he does. As he described, he would constantly have it. You can see it in the ring. You can see it exposed at certain times. But to know that's where it really rooted is super important, because that happens to a lot of people. Some sort of an event in your life, and for several people I know, a death in the family, death to a father, can impact you so much. I know someone who ended up being a professional hockey player because of it. One individual told me, if my father didn't die, I wouldn't have been a professional hockey player. But it drove him so much to play as hard as he could once his dad passed away, and to stay so driven to it, because that was his anger outlet. Alec, on the other hand, it called upon him in a different way. It pushed him in a different direction, pushed him away from the sport into MMA. And that's something I think is really important for everyone to really reflect on. How I mentioned boxing speaks to someone, how a sport can speak to you. And if it speaks to you, listen to it. Let your mind, your soul, whatever part of you is calling it, to explore it. And boxing is going to be similar to a lot of sports. Everything sucks when you start it, and you should allow yourself to explore that, because anything else that you kind of like, you're going to easily get pushed out if you only kind of like it. But if there's something deep inside you that wants to explore something, that's worth exploring, because when things, first off, you'd always explore adventure, right? But then there's also the idea that when you start something, you're going to suck at it. Even Alex said he felt like he sucked at boxing. He thought he was good and he sucked. But there's still something inside you like, I got to be better. Because that point of resistance that everyone's going to feel in a new sport, a new task, it could be learning how to play guitar. And I've tried to learn how to play guitar many times. There's not enough of that calling to me to explore guitar for me to go through that resistance. But with boxing, there was. I went through resistance. I had many times where I felt I sucked, but I still wanted to get better. And there's some people who, when you meet that resistance, it's too hard. It's not for me. You should explore something that even when it sucks, it's still calling upon you and you're still drawn into the sport despite that difficulty. And I think both of us really related to that. I think it's also a really valuable lesson for anyone who is in the sport of boxing or any sport, the value of the strength conditioning that we talked about, that it's about preventing injuries. Certainly we hope that you're going to get faster, stronger, all that stuff. But it's the injury prevention, the sport is what's going to make you better at the sport. But if you're stronger on your legs, for sure, you're going to be more stable, for sure. But for the most part, the skill development is very sport specific. We just want you to be able to show up for that skill routinely and to make sure you give it its due. It doesn't even have to be a ton. That's the really cool thing about working with Alec. We did times where we did a building phase, and it was mostly over COVID because he couldn't compete. So it was like at the start, he was doing 2 to 3 times a week of strength training. But eventually it was just once a week and one conditioning day. So he wasn't trying to get crazy strong. He was just trying to maintain. And that's pretty minimal time. I also just want to highlight the thing about strength conditioning that we did very well for him. We had to teach him not to work too hard too often. And a lot of boxers make this mistake. They think grind 6 days a week and, take one rest day and then repeat. And people can adapt to it, but that doesn't mean it's their best performance. You get caught up in the Rocky mindset. And a lot of people just have traditional mindsets that was like, yeah, run every day, do this every day, and you can adapt. And it's like, you can adapt-ish. That doesn't mean it's optimal. And I always tell people this. I want you to be able to always work hard in the gym when you're supposed to, but that does not mean every day. And if you're underdoing your recovery, then you're not working hard because you're too sore to do it. Your body's not responding. And I've been there. I still remember the day that I'd been training so hard, getting ready for a fight, strength training, everything, 2 days, and trying to spar a guy who I knew I was significantly more skilled than. I couldn't touch him. And this is like 2 weeks out from a fight. I'm like, how is this guy who I didn't even think should be in the ring touching me? And I felt like I was punching and pushing. But what happens is when you are too exhausted, your nervous system has just been overextended. It just won't turn on. I could not fire my fast twitch muscles. I couldn't be fast. I couldn't hit fast enough. And he's beating me to the punch. And yet in no other case was he ever beating me to the punch. And so it taught me, I'm like, I gotta dial it down. Like this is that limitation. And you don't want to experience that within your training when you're getting ready for a fight. You want to anticipate it. And you want to be able to push hard when you need to. You want to be able to perform in every sparring session, in every heavy bag session when you need to call upon yourself to do explosive things. So it's important to consider resting more than you think you need to. And the other major lesson that I think more boxers and people in any sport, I know a lot of people in so many sports that forget nutrition. Like just because you're not trying to lose weight, certainly if you're trying to lose weight, it's important. But if you're trying to perform, nutrition is going to be literally the fuel. Like it's what you're made of. And his story about how he almost threw up during the fight just because he was not like properly nourished for that fight affected his performance. He could have been better. And it's a good thing that he won. It's a good thing that he got through that fight and he got that. But that could have been something you're like, man, I didn't control that enough. I didn't plan that enough. I didn't put enough effort. And as I'd mentioned, think about your hard hearts, not your easy hearts when you're doing things in life. It's just the example of boxing. It's like people love to show up for the hard or the easy hard. I love to spar. That's an easy hard. I love to hit the bag. Easy hard. Shadow box. Easy hard. It's not that it isn't a difficult thing. It's that the easy thing that calls upon you, like you're intrinsically motivated to do it. But the hard, you're not. The hard is a responsibility. It's the mobility stuff that's very awkward. Maybe you don't like strength conditioning, and a lot of boxers don't, but you still got to show up for it. But the nutrition is every single day. It's the stuff that's going to help fuel you. And for when I was working with him, it was amazing how disciplined he could be. You could go for runs, all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, but are you going to go pre-cook your food? I don't know. It's a lot of work. I'm kind of lazy. It's like, hey, if that kid's able to he would say it. He said he would say the word lazy. So you're not really lazy. You're just not willing to go through the hard. And then I always tell every boxer, control everything you can up to the moment that you get to fight. And nutrition is a controllable factor. You can't control your skill all the time. You can't control who you're fighting. You can't control your height. And so if I can at least control nutrition, it improves my odds dramatically. So own that when it comes to any performance. The other performance piece that I think is really valuable if you're someone in the sport of boxing or any sort of sport that you're concerned about nerves is like to have fun. It's so cliche, but it's super important for those events because you can't make it like the practice if it's too much riding on it for you. And I'll just say, and I'll also say that everyone's a little bit different. Some people can run off nerves better, but for myself and what I saw in Alec, and I've seen a lot of fighters, I always tell them, be yourself in there the best you can. Meaning like, try to make it like sparring, try to have fun, try to think about, hey, this would work in sparring. This would work in sparring. It's like, we get the stage and, we just had the Male at the Met and the United Boxing Classic, and you see these people get nervous and not act like themselves because of the stage. And you want to forget about the stage. You're just in the ring with the guy that, it's just like sparring in the ring. And if you can have fun with that idea, like the win or loss doesn't matter as much as you being present and doing your best in the moment, it's a little bit different. Having just that word of, okay, I can be a little fun in here. That gives you a chance to explore yourself, to express yourself. And sometimes you want to listen to coach, you want to listen to someone outside the ring, but just express yourself. That's actually the whole idea. So from there too, I want to highlight his mindset of being driven, which was super fascinating to hear why he went into the military. And I didn't quite get it because I outlined it very simple. Like, this is not the fastest way to the best MMA career, but it was for him. And I said the same thing about him doing his choice for like in the ring. Before one of his fights, I said, if you see something that I don't see, you have every right to do it. And so I could outline all these things, like, this is why I don't think you should do the military. Yeah, I signed up. You should do it then. Because if logic doesn't matter to you enough, again, that calling, that inner desire to do something. And I couldn't imagine what it's like to be in an atmosphere that he described, doing monotony, the same routine work. There was a lot less boxing happening around here. And so he's just like, I need something different. And he loves those challenges. He loves hard work. So the military seems right. Not to mention, he's able to do a lot of MMA training in his off time when he's working for the military. So it worked out well for him. And I don't always have the answers. And I think that's just, if there's something I hope people can learn from that, is if there's some sort of mindset that's calling you, I reiterate what I spoke about boxing is like, explore it. Explore it. As long as it's calling you to do something to challenge you, explore it. I think it's worth it. So I hope you learned a lot today. I think there's some great lessons in Alec's story, how he evolved from being just a boy trying to box to being a man in the military. And please, if you found this valuable, share it with someone who's really into the sport of boxing or in MMA. And if you really liked it, maybe leave a 5-star review because it would really help this podcast grow. As always, I'm going to thank you as a listener because it takes a lot of time out of your life to listen to us talk on here. And so I always appreciate that a great deal because I'm here to help you with your own ambition, because life is not about the pursuit of happiness, but rather the happiness within your pursuit. And I'll catch you next time.